Today's Fueling Ohio's Future Series Forum is presented by American Electric Power with support from Columbia Gas of Ohio and in partnership with the OSU's Office of Energy and the Environment, each of whom are represented here today by their associates and friends. Won't you please help me thank them and welcome Pablo Vegas, President and Chief Operating Officer of American Electric Power Ohio, to the podium to introduce our guests.
Thank you very much, Kermit. American Electric Power is proud to support the mission of the Columbus Metropolitan Club and to engage the community in the conversation week after week in the issues that are important to our citizens, our leaders, and to the overall quality of life in our region and the state of Ohio. NiSource is one of the nation's largest natural gas distribution companies with operations in 7 states and more than 7,000 employees. In total, it serves more than 3.5 million natural gas customers and 500,000 electric customers under the names Columbia Gas and NIPSCO brands. You likely know them as the parent company of Columbia Gas of Ohio. They're headquartered in Maryville, Indiana, and NiSource maintains a very significant corporate presence in downtown Columbus. They are consistently recognized as the world's most ethical companies for 5 consecutive years and are a member of the North American Dow Jones Sustainability Index. It really is a pleasure to get to introduce a leader that is connected to Columbus and to the fabric of the business community in Central Ohio in so many ways. Joe began his energy industry career as an electrical engineer in transmission and distribution planning at AEP in Steubenville, Ohio. During his tenure with AEP, Joe worked in many customer-oriented and strategic roles and held executive leader positions in general services, information technology, and in his last role at AEP served as president and chief operating officer of AEP Ohio, a position I value very highly. In 2012, Joe joined NiSource as their executive vice president and group CEO for NiSource's gas distribution segment and was just recently named NiSource's newest president and chief executive officer. But some of Joe's most important attributes are not on his official bio. He is a true servant leader. He mentors many professionals in and outside of his company. He's a tremendous musician, a guitarist, a keyboardist, a singer, and an accordionist. And he leads a group of Columbus-based business professionals in a rock band that has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for worthwhile charities here in Central Ohio. And he's a good friend who I've had the privilege of knowing for more than 10 years and had the brilliant foresight to hire me for my first job with AEP 10 years ago. So please welcome NiSource CEO Joe Hamrock. And please keep your applause going for Don DePerro, the president and publisher of Columbus Business First, who's here as well. So Joe is going to start us off with some conversations from the podium and then join Don for a conversation. And so gentlemen, thank you both. And Joe, the podium is yours.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you for those very kind words and for sticking to the script I provided for you. I do appreciate that. More than anything, I appreciate our friendship. So what a great privilege. First, I'd like to thank the Columbus Metropolitan Club for the opportunity for this forum and for the Fueling Ohio's Future series, which I think is incredibly valuable opportunity for all of us to come together around many important issues in our community and in our case, energy in particular. And what an exciting and dynamic time it is to be in the energy industry. NiSource, the company that I represent, is at the center of many important issues right here for the U.S. and for the Midwest and for our state, Ohio, as we look at the prolific development of natural gas resources that provide incredible value for our communities, for our customers, and frankly for the United States as well. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to spend a few minutes talking about those things. Pablo already shared who NiSource is, and I appreciate that because I often have to explain what NiSource is, who NiSource is, especially here in Ohio, where Columbia Gas of Ohio is so well known. And I didn't really appreciate that until I made the difficult decision to leave AEP after 26 years. And one of the first calls I made was to my parents who live in the Ohio Valley where I grew up and where I started my career. And I remember distinctly telling my dad, I'm leaving AEP. He said, "You're what?" And I said, I'm going to NiSource. And he said, NiSource? Who is NiSource? And once I explained it was Columbia Gas of Ohio, he said, okay, now I get it. It makes sense, leaving one great company, joining another great company. But oftentimes, the NiSource brand is behind the scenes in terms of who we are and our commitment to our communities. So really important to get that out there. Just recap a little bit of the parameters of the NiSource business. Headquartered in Merrillville, Indiana, that's northwest Indiana, where we operate an electric and gas distribution company and a fully integrated electric company. And we employ more than 3,000 people in Indiana and have a significant presence here in Columbus, Ohio as well, which is often not fully understood. More than 1,200 employees in our new corporate offices in the Arena District, which is well beyond what we originally anticipated when we committed to the district just a few short years ago. So growing, very dynamic business, very strong commitment not only to Northwest Indiana, Central Ohio, but to all of the communities that we serve across the 7 states where we do business. 7,500 employees in total, and thousands more beyond that who are executing as our business partners the significant construction programs that are underway, modernization of our pipeline systems and our T&D systems, as well as our generating plants in the NIPSCO electric business. And until July 1st, and that was just last week, until July 1st, NiSource operated an extensive network of gas transmission and storage companies throughout the United States. And just a little bit of a backdrop on that, up until probably 5 years ago, those businesses, the gas transmission and storage and the utility businesses, were very tightly related. As we've seen the shale development occur in the Utica and Marcellus in particular, right under our footprint, the opportunity for our gas transmission business to develop new pipes, new systems to bring those prolific resources to market has been a once in a forever kind of opportunity for us. And as the business model went towards that opportunity, it became clear to us that it made a lot of sense to separate the businesses into 2 premium, pure play industry leaders. One, NiSource on the utility side, the other, CPG, now trading separately. In fact, rang the bell on the New York Stock Exchange today to celebrate the launch of a new company in the marketplace, that being Columbia Pipeline Group. So very strong fundamentals that drove the separation. A couple of quick parameters about what we do to make sure we get to the questions and the dialogue here. We are spending about $1.4 billion a year on the utility side, the NiSource side, across all 7 states, programmatically modernizing utility infrastructure. That's the core of our business. And it's all founded on a deep commitment to customer service, community service, being an industry leader in the areas that matter most, those being safety for our employees, for the public, for our network of business partners, providing excellent customer service, and then executing in a way that makes our business predictable, sustainable in every concept of that word. And then third, I would say we aim to be, and in many cases are already demonstrating, that we're among the best places to work in the communities that we're privileged to serve. And there's a lot of elements to that that are important to us as a company. So speaking of the relationship between AEP and Columbia Gas, or the electric and the gas industry, there are a lot of places where we collaborate, and there are a lot of places where we compete. And back in my history, 20-some years ago, I would say the competition, the rivalry between Columbia Gas and AEP, or gas and electric, if you will, was much more pronounced than it is today. And we were actively engaged in promoting the benefits of electric living or the benefits of natural gas appliances. And I worked in the marketing and customer services department at Columbus Southern Power. This is more than 20 years ago. And I vividly remember how active we were. And that marketing department sat at the corner of Front Street and Spring Street. And to show you how intense the rivalry was, Columbia Gas of Ohio, and I think this was Jack Partridge that did this, bought the billboard outside of our window, and they would constantly change it from gas heat is warm heat to gas is better than electric. And it would have been heresy or a traitorship to leave AEP to go to Columbia Gas back then. I'm happy to say that, and of course I'm teasing a bit, but I'm happy to say that today the relationship is very much a partnership. There are a lot of places where we work together with our programs to promote energy efficiency, to promote conservation, new builder programs where the companies work very closely together to ensure that we're investing in sustainable energy futures for our customers and our joint customers. And so it's a real privilege to be representing the industry in general and NiSource specifically. With that, let me turn it over to Don and we'll get the dialogue started. Thank you for the opportunity.
Come on over. Thank you. So, I mean, to break it down, moving from AEP to Columbia Gas, NiSource, you're going from being a coal guy to a gas guy. And why don't you expand on that a little bit and explain maybe some of the challenges and the differences? And,
I'm an all of the above guy, first of all. So let's keep in mind that NiSource operates an electric utility in Indiana in traditional coal-based generation, environmentally compliant generation, as well as natural gas-fired generation, much like the rest of the industry, and very committed to a sustainable future that is dependent on the resources that we know today, that being the coal fleet that exists across the nation, as well as the progressive march toward natural gas as the leading fuel these days. And it's notable that just 2 months ago, in April, for the first time, the Energy Information Administration reported that natural gas generation of electricity surpassed coal-based generation of electricity in that 1 month. That's unheard of in terms of how the industry operated in the past. So it's very much a moment where we're looking at all of the options for generating electricity. How can we do that in an environmentally and customer-sensitive way and promote technologies that can move us forward together? And that's what NiSource is all about, and I know that's what AEP is all about as well.
so you've been CEO all of about 1 week since that decision was made. And,
do I look tired?
you should be in my business. You've also, at the same board meeting, for all intents and purposes, separated out the pipeline company and made 2 distinct companies, divisions of NiSource. How does that affect you? Will the pipeline company also, of course, work to supply some of your competitors gas? And how does that all play out?
Well, first and probably of most interest to this audience, it's a net positive for Central Ohio. When you look at the company, the way we've been situated with the pipeline group and the utilities group, having employees right here in Central Ohio, as we separated, we're both growing the employee base. NiSource will continue to have full occupancy, 1,200 employees based at the Arena District corporate offices, and the Columbia Pipeline Group, as they move to their new offices in New Albany, are already starting with over 100 employees. So it's not a net takeaway, it's a net growth opportunity for the community. As you look at the relationship between the two, I like to remind the Pipeline Group that we have been and will continue to be their largest customer. And they haven't forgotten that, of course, but the relationship changes from affiliate to very much commercial and a regulated relationship. Much of our supply of natural gas to the LDCs, the Columbia companies, comes from Columbia Pipeline Group through federally regulated contracts, and we'll continue to see that in the future.
You mentioned you moved into the Arena District, your kitty corner to us. Welcome
Yes.
to the neighborhood.
Thank you.
A great move, beautiful buildings that were developed by Nationwide Realty Investors. What made you stay in downtown and keep your core there? As you said, the Pipeline Group is in New Albany, still Central Ohio, of course, which
Absolutely.
we welcome.
Yeah.
But was that important to you to stay downtown?
Well, in the sense of full transparency, that decision was made before I joined NiSource. But
It doesn't let you out of answering the question.
But a decision I fully support and would have made had I been there.
Not only does he play all these instruments, he could dance pretty well, too.
Yeah. So first and foremost, we've had a very long-standing commitment to Columbus and Central Ohio, with the Columbia Gas headquarters on Civic Center Drive, having been there for 27 years, I believe, at the time we moved. As we looked at the opportunities to either renew there or scan the community, we looked far and wide and looked at the Arena District, and I've got to give the Nationwide Realty team, Brian Ellis and his team, credit for creating just a wonderful district, not just the facility that we're in and the partners who created that, but the district is so vibrant and such a great place for employees, the experience of being based there in a building that's built to last. We've put up a facility that's appropriate for our business and reflects the long-term commitment to Central Ohio. And so all of those factors weighed into it, and of course, commercial terms always matter.
And the number of jobs are actually far, far more than what you originally announced when the announcement was made to build the new headquarters.
That's correct.
And you said you had 1,400 total? Approaching 1,300 in the Arena District, and I think when we first made the announcement, we had committed to about 900. So the growth that's happened in a few short years is all reflective of the growth in the industry and the opportunity to continue to invest in our systems in a very supportive environment. Joe, you touched on this in your opening remarks. So the pipeline group, which is now split off into its own company, is in New Albany. Your utilities division is downtown. You're the CEO. You have a relatively new CFO, also here. This question has been posed in many different ways, but for all intents and purposes, NiSource's headquarters is in Columbus. However, you still claim to have the headquarters in Indiana. How many jobs are actually at that site in Indiana? And why don't you just make the move to downtown Columbus?
It's not the first time. Actually, that question came to me first from Janet Jackson, of all people. When I first announced that I was moving from AEP to NiSource, and she didn't waste any time asking that question. And
Sure.
I'm privileged to have served on Janet's board for 6 years and learned a lot about that part of our community through that experience. The fact of the matter is we're committed to all of the communities that we serve and all of the states that we serve for the long term. As I noted earlier, over 3,000 employees in Indiana, where we operate both an electric and a gas utility, by far our most significant operations. Ohio right behind that in terms of the scale of the utilities that we operate. Our largest gas LDC is Columbia Gas of Ohio with nearly 1.5 million customers. So as we look at the commitments we make, it's really an all of the above again type of commitment, a long-standing commitment to Northwest Indiana and to Indiana in general that we will remain for the future. There's no consideration of moving the headquarters. And we've operated as a virtual team for many, many years. One of the unique things about NiSource that I found when I got there is executives and leaders across the states, and we operate very effectively from almost a virtual sense. And so that there's about half the executive team in Indiana, about half based here, and we move back and forth quite a bit to the locations where the business activity is.
And your footprint is really larger in Indiana.
Very much larger in Indiana, that's right. Yeah. That's a key for us.
One of our Columbus Business First's recent 40 under 40 honorees, Dan Creekmore, you're newly named president of Columbia Gas of Ohio, one of your largest utilities, of course. How did you come to selecting Dan to replace the legend of Jack Partridge after all these years? And how does Dan fit into his new role? What does he bring to the table?
He can't wait.
Dan, I'm asking this on your behalf. I want you to know.
He can't wait to hear what I'm going to say here, I'm sure. I didn't know Dan was under 40 when I picked him for that. Honestly,
Jack did because he nominated him.
Dan, and I'll say this very confidently, Dan is a remarkable leader. You might say seasoned beyond his years in terms of the leadership traits that he brings to the job. And one of the things I look for in any leader is performance. Have they executed in the roles they've been in? And potential. Can we see that there's a lot more capacity for leadership there? And that potential I tend to look at through the lens of, are they focused on people, on the customers and the communities that we're privileged to serve, on bringing out the best in the teams that we're privileged to lead? and as well as looking at the stakeholder community. This business that we're in, the utility business, is very much at the center of a lot of stakeholders' interests, and it's important that we engage in ways that seek common ground, seek common solutions, so leaders that demonstrate those kind of skills are right at the forefront of the opportunity set for us. And we have a lot of people that fit that bill, and I'm very pleased to have had Dan on the team. In fact, Jack's mentorship of Dan is one of the reasons that I think he was ready at the time when the moment came. So a great opportunity there for Dan and for the organization with a long track in front of us. The other thing I would add, though, in terms of leadership that I tend to look for is a willingness to learn through experience, particularly experience that takes you beyond your comfort zone, to stretch yourself into new areas where maybe I didn't grow up in this area and didn't know this area, but I'm willing to step in and learn from the people who are there doing the work. And Dan spent a stint, he's an example of this, he spent a stint after coming out of legal and regulatory to run the Columbia Gas of Ohio operations group for a little more than a year, I think, right? And what a year it was. It was the year that we had the first polar vortex 2 winters ago. And you probably don't think much about it, but the mode we're in, when it's 20 below zero, it's all hands on deck, and it's very much an operational excellence moment. And Dan stepped in as a new leader and did very well in that regard under circumstances that I think created a lifetime of learning in a very short period of time. So those traits are what differentiates leaders for me, and I would say Dan and many other leaders that I've been privileged to work with fit that bill. And it's not just an age and progression thing. It's a lot of things that drive into that.
Joe, natural gas prices certainly are low and have been low for a while. How does that impact Columbia Gas? How has it maybe some ways benefited Columbia Gas and NiSource? And what's your outlook for prices moving down the road?
Yeah, if you don't trust anybody who tells you what the price is going to be tomorrow, but the first and foremost point about the current environment is how beneficial it's been for customers, for consumers, especially on the natural gas side, where we've had a history of prices swinging pretty dramatically in short periods of time. You might have $4 gas one year and $10 gas a year or two later. And if you look back at the curves, they look like mountain ranges. If you look at the curve over the past several years, predominantly, if not entirely, because of the prolific development of Marcellus and Utica shale and other shale resources across the country, that price has dropped to all-time low levels. Customers' bills today, in many cases, are 20 or 30% lower than they were a few short years ago, if not more. And more importantly, the outlook is stable. So the outlook for the future, based on what we now know about how beneficial the shale resources are, is that the prices may climb slowly over time. You'll see predictions of $5 or $6 gas by the end of the decade. That is still on an inflation-adjusted basis, very low, very affordable. So for gas consumers, very beneficial. I would also say for electric customers, just as beneficial. And I've heard peers in the industry talk a lot about the pass-through for both businesses. For us, Columbia Gas of Ohio doesn't make a dime on the natural gas. So how much you use and the price is really something that we're not involved in. We're distributing and delivering the natural gas. So we're very well positioned to help you find the most efficient solutions, the most economic ways to use the product, and we spend a lot of time on that. On the electric side, the power plants are shifting rapidly as well, and that passes right through to customers as well in most cases.
So you mentioned that we've had sustained record low temperatures over the last couple of winters. Yeah. We should, on behalf of all of us as consumers, mention a few things about how can we conserve natural gas? How can we all be a little bit more energy efficient?
Yeah, those peak cold conditions remind us of that. The last 2 winters we've had the polar vortex conditions, and that nothing makes you pay attention to your bill more than high usage that'll drive a bill that jumps up, especially if you're not on a budget plan. And we have many customers that are sensitized to that. We have a dozen or so programs at Columbia Gas of Ohio designed to help customers find ways to weatherize their homes, do energy efficiency audits or conservation audits on their home, all provided by the utility and very valuable. Also building new homes programs to help find ways to energy efficiently build a new structure. So a lot of ways to do that. Our websites provide a lot of information. What I think is most notable, you'll see some states on a policy front go in and out of that game, whether or not energy efficiency or other types of alternatives are in vogue. We've been in that game since 1982. We've had programs like this for our customers for over 30 years, and the cumulative value of that for our customers, we estimate at $450 million in savings on natural gas usage that they've avoided. So lots of great ways to do that, and I appreciate the opportunity to get the word out one more time about the value.
You'd think with natural gas prices being as low as they've been that there would be more of an effort or an interest in the consumer public to buy natural gas powered vehicles. I know gas prices are still really low considering where we've been in the past few years, but just in the last couple of weeks, Honda announced they're no longer going to produce natural gas powered vehicles, which was a bit of a surprise as time moves on and we're looking for alternative ways to fuel our autos. How did you feel about that? How was that taken at Columbia Gas, and how do you predict for the future?
And I can't speak for Honda's decision, but I would imagine, and I've watched this on both electric and gas vehicles over my entire career, there have been sort of waves of interest and waves of investment from both the auto sector and the utility sector in both types of alternative vehicle fuels. Hybrids have certainly caught on, and we've seen that happen because there's still the opportunity to use existing infrastructure. My sense is it's a read of the market. Honda's decision is a read of the market. You typically see early adopters run into these new technologies, very clear applications for certain types of use. Natural gas vehicles work great for fleets with predictable daily usage patterns where you don't have to worry about, am I going to be away from a fueling station? But it comes down to the basic lack of infrastructure for fueling stations, either electric or natural gas vehicles, that would allow widespread mass market adoption of these technologies. And that's a key problem, a key policy challenge for the country and for many of our states. We are very committed to advocating for development of those kinds of policies, although on the business side, our business stops at the meter. We are not pursuing development of infrastructure to fuel vehicles, either electric or gas, very much staying close to our knitting around distribution of energy to our customers and promoting opportunities to develop new sources like that that are environmentally beneficial and can help our customers.
Just a week or so in the job as the new CEO, what are one or two things that you really want NiSource to focus on under your leadership?
There are really two, and it's first and foremost two pillars that drive everything we do. Excellent service to our customers, staying focused throughout the entire organization and well into the ecosystem of business partners that we have as well on our customer, every experience our customers have, meeting or exceeding their needs. And there are so many different ways to measure that, so many different ways to talk about that. It comes down to how we drive in their communities, how we leave their property after we do work on their property. It's not just the call center interactions, but it's an extensive focus on customer experience. And then safety. Everything we do is wired toward our employees being safe, our contractors being safe, and our customers and the public that we're privileged to serve being in a safe environment based on our operation of the facilities. I would add to that, though, engagement in the community. I think it's critical for companies, for all companies, but our company in particular, utilities. We're such a part of the fabric of the communities that we serve. And I expect and encourage our leaders to be engaged in the community through active involvement in the nonprofit sector, sitting on boards, helping to contribute to our communities being great places to live and work. And that's an important part, not only for the company, but for leaders. I've seen great leadership development come through being engaged outside the walls of the firm. And I think that creates a reputation and creates a much deeper sense of engagement and commitment to to the communities that we serve. Those are the three big ones.
I think historically consumers have looked on utility companies as kind of large, kind of slow-moving, not so much consumer-centric type of operations. But you know, it's a new day and age. More and more consumers want things online. They want to have their interactions through their laptop or their iPhone or however they're doing it. How are you becoming more consumer-centric in this technology-driven environment?
It's fair. It's a progression for us. It's fair to say that the utility industry is always going to be a little bit behind that curve, but there's a good reason for that. We have to be sure there are critical interactions that we've got to handle right every time, 100% of the time, whether it's electric or gas. If a customer has a safety issue or an outage, we can't take the risk that early adoption of a new technology or early adoption of a new platform is not going to hit right 100% of the time. So it's with that spirit of that sort of that core foundational commitment to customer service for every customer every time, particularly around safety and key reliability issues that drive a lot of our interaction. That's what keeps us a little bit behind, and I think for good reason. But as we progress, we recognize consumers are looking at entirely different ways of interacting with all of their providers, whether it's retail or utilities or anything else we do. So we're actively promoting web self-service, web-based self-service, or remote device self-service technologies that can allow customers to interact with us in many new and innovative ways that emulate what they see from other service providers.
Joe, in your opening remarks, you mentioned the Marcellus Shale play in western Pennsylvania, and of course the Utica Shale play here in eastern Ohio.
Right.
How has that impacted Columbia Gas and NiSource, and does it have a greater impact maybe on the pipeline company, distribution-wise, but how does that impact the utility side?
There are a number of benefits that we've seen, both the utility and the pipeline. I think it's fair to say, just from a growth opportunity, the pipeline side of the business, our pipeline, former affiliate, as well as many others in that space, have seen, again, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build new systems to bring those resources to the market. We've actually seen the flow of natural gas shift dramatically. It used to be from the Louisiana area, from the Gulf of Mexico, up through the Midwest and up into northeast parts of the country. Now that flow is actually reversing. Some of our former affiliate pipelines have reversed the flow and now take gas from the Midwest to the Gulf. And so it's a pretty dramatic turnaround for the entire industry. When you look at us, it's two things predominantly. Our customers benefit immensely. The price benefits, the opportunity to burn clean, efficient natural gas affordably is a great thing for our customers. And then you look at the economic development, the jobs and the investment in our territory, in Ohio, Pennsylvania, where we've got a significant footprint. It's pronounced. And eastern Ohio is where I'm from. I was born in Barnesville and grew up in the Ohio Valley. And so I've still got deep connections there through family and friends. And you can see the renaissance occurring as a result of the opportunity to invest in these opportunities. And it's a really good thing for the economy as well as for our customers.
In just a few minutes, we'll be taking questions from all of you. So if any of you would like to step up to the mic, and if you have a question or two for Joe, we'll welcome those. You mentioned community engagement, how important that is. You've maintained your local headquarters right here in downtown Columbus. How do you see your role as the CEO leading more community engagement for NiSource and Columbia Gas?
There are a number of ways to build on the foundation we already have. And a couple of examples, we've got new members of the community, new corporate executives right here in town. I'll introduce quickly Donald Brown, our new Chief Financial Officer to the community, actually a Columbus native. Grew up here and lost his way for about 15 years, but we got him back. So he's back as a Chief Financial Officer of NiSource at corporate level. Very pleased to have him. And Carl Levander, moving in as our Chief Regulatory Officer, moving to the area as well. And these individuals are already getting engaged in the opportunity to work in the community, to participate actively in the nonprofit sector, you name it. So it's an important part of leadership for us. But beyond that, I'm really proud of the work our employees do. As I was leaving, my assistant was headed out to deliver Meals on Wheels. There's a big network of employees at our headquarters. Did I call it headquarters? At our corporate office here.
Can we quote you on that?
I think it's on film. So
I think our Tom Knox is here somewhere. Tom, our energy writer.
And Ronald McDonald House, and the list goes on and on. But it's not a one-time thing. They're there every month. They're dedicated to supporting the community. That's such a powerful thing, not from a corporate standpoint, just from being engaged in the community. For people to have that connection is powerful, and you would expect to see much more of that and continued sustained support for that.
Utility companies historically have played a major role in economic development. Since Kenny McDonald has come in the last 4 or 5 years or so, Columbus 2020 has done an outstanding job of economic development and growth here for Central Ohio. What roles do Columbia Gas and NiSource play in attracting jobs to Ohio, Central Ohio, and even other states?
There are, that's such an important part of what we do, what we've done, what the industry has done for decades. And you look at what the folks who are looking to new sites, where they want to site, and in the top 3, you will always find utility infrastructure as one of the key variables that determines the viability of a location, of a site. And so electric and gas companies, working in partnership with the economic development authorities, Jobs Ohio in our case here in Ohio, we're very actively engaged. Darnita Bradley on our team, I don't know how you do it, but she covers the whole state. She's engaged in all of the regional partnerships in the 61 counties that we serve. And then we bring funding to help close the gap when there are times that there's just not enough to make the deal work. We've been involved in recently $1.5 million worth of gap closing financing on a number of projects that have brought nearly 4,000 jobs and nearly $400 million in capital investment to the state, which is a very powerful thing. But we don't do that alone. It's always in partnership with the economic development authorities in the various regions. We have one of our executives serves on the board of APEG, the Southeastern Ohio regional partner to Jobs Ohio. So very engaged, not just in terms of the professionals that do that work, but every part of making deals come together that can bring good jobs and good investment to our state.
Joe, it's the Columbus Metropolitan Club's tradition to take audience questions. So if you'd like, anyone, please step to the microphone over here. Please give us your name and go ahead and ask your question. And I'd like to thank all of you in advance for not making long editorial comments. In anticipation of that, Joe, why don't you talk a little bit about the Customer Choice Program in Ohio and your role in that?
Yeah, the gas industry is pretty far along in Ohio in particular, and a number of states with development of customer choice programs. And we have something around 40% of our residential customers who actively choose a supplier, and about 50% of our commercial customers. And we are advocates for a framework that provides choice for customers who want to make that choice, but also provides an option that for customers who don't want to deal with it and just let the utility handle that for them. So we run auctions to be sure that our customers get the best opportunity to be served from low-price resources or resources that match their needs. And that model works very well because it keeps the market functioning in a very effective and transparent way. And so I'd say we're probably in a pretty good balanced equation here on the gas side. Electric, of course, is a state-by-state variation as well. And Indiana is not a customer choice state where our electric operations reside.
Our first question.
Yeah, Charlie Warner. Question is, we saw in the papers that Ohio University is converting to natural gas. Is this a new trend? Is this a major development or not a major development? How does this factor in to the total equation?
I believe they're going to spend about $5.5 million to run a new pipeline to the university.
And that is a Columbia Gas of Ohio service being built or expanded to serve that. The question is it a trend? Those conversions, like Ohio University, there was one just like it that occurred at Penn State last year. Many universities operate older coal-fired boiler plants. to fuel their steam systems and their energy systems, sometimes electric generation as well. There were US EPA rulings called MATS, and I won't get into all the technical details, but those kinds of technologies had to be phased out across the industry to comply with new environmental rules. And by far the best choice, given all of the available options today, is to convert to natural gas. And that's what you're seeing Ohio University do. They evaluated all of their options. They evaluated, and I actually used to work with them in my days at AEP as well, so kind of seen that from both sides. So I'd say it's a trend driven by the progression of environmental regulations for clean power and clean energy systems, not just for utilities, but in the industry as well.
Is the pipeline company involved in that?
Not in that one. That one's the Columbia Gas of Ohio distribution company building those systems.
Yes, hi, Andy Campbell. A question that's come up, and I understand this is ongoing in the TTIP negotiations, the European and the U.S. trade pact that's behind closed doors right now. But the U.S. energy policy for years has been to not export U.S. product. And I wonder now with the new Marcellus and Utica Shale plays, if there's opportunity maybe to think of LNG as an export product, if there might be policy change along those lines. Your thoughts?
Sure. It's an important thing to keep in balance. As we look at the natural gas supply-demand equation, we've seen the shale resources ramp up the supply side, and we want to sustain development of those. And there are a number of LNG export projects that are occurring as approved by the federal regulators. And that's done, I would say, under a watchful eye to be sure we maintain domestic energy supplies for, that's the policy as we see it today. We think that's sound policy that provides for development of resources as well as domestic supply to be met. So a very delicate balance that needs to be struck. And it's driving opportunities for the pipeline companies as well to create American jobs, to build systems, to take gas to those export terminals while also dropping it off to local distribution companies and other customers along the way. Very beneficial.
Hello, Warren Fishman. You touched on transportation on cars, and there's certainly a lot of cars on the road, and I just test drove a Tesla, and there could be a trend toward electric cars, but if there is, how do you think that'll affect the grid and our lives in the next 20 years or so?
Yeah, that's and I agree, there could be a trend. We're seeing some of that happening. The opportunity for at-home charging systems seems more real than ever before, especially with some of the battery technologies that's being developed. There are actually interesting opportunities to consider leveraging the batteries as a resource on the grid. So if you think about a car sitting in your garage that's charging when it needs to charge up, but also if the peak occurs on the grid and you could use that car battery to power some of your home systems or business systems for short periods of time. That's a long-term opportunity. We haven't really seen that technology or that concept make its way into commercial availability, but that's an example of the kind of implication for the grid. Certainly could add load to the grid, and it's all a question of what will the habits be, when will the charging cycles occur, does it have a significant implication for needing to upgrade the grid to meet new demands? Open question at this point. Thank you.
Hello, Keith Dimoff. I'm a new CMC member here. I have a question on the role of natural gas in industrial energy efficiency, projects like combined heat and power, and also how you can see natural gas fired plants maybe contribute to a modernization of the electric grid and movement towards a more distributed generation and smart grid. Yeah, well, 3 questions in there, and they're all good.
You're hired.
And it wasn't an editorial comment either, I don't think. So I'll take it from the reverse order there. The distributed generation idea seems more and more realistic, probably not in the short term in terms of large-scale adoption. So the idea is you've got a natural gas line into your business. You could generate electricity with a clean electric generator fueled by natural gas. You might be able to do that in a way that's economic, that offsets some of the utility costs. I don't see that going all the way to rapid decoupling or taking the customers off of the electric grid, but it creates pretty significant policy implications for, so what is the utility paid to do when the customer is generating their own electricity? We do something called net metering that allows a customer to sell energy that they produce back onto the grid. Those are some pretty delicate and complex policy issues that each of the states are working their way through, and certainly something that we're watching. The implications are the same for solar, if you will. You look at where we've seen widespread adoption of solar, that puts a real different cycle on the grid operation because those supplies come up in a very fast way when the sun's shining and drop off, and the utility has to be there to back that up. So interesting implications on the policy and the engineering front. When you look at electric gen on the large scale, it's already happening. We've already seen a significant shift toward any new generation and dispatch of the current fleet shift towards natural gas away from coal, predominantly on economics. The way natural gas is priced right now, it's predominantly driven by economics, but there's also environmental compliance factors that drive that as well. And each part of the country is situated a little bit differently. Here in the Midwest, a distinct shift from coal towards natural gas. And as I noted earlier, first time in history, more gas-fired generation than coal. Any new unit, and this has been said many times, any new unit that's built on the, call it the utility baseload side of the equation in the next generation is almost certainly going to be a natural gas unit, mixed in with wind, solar, forms of renewables that make sense in different regions. So lots of opportunity. And there was a third part of the question, I'm not sure I got it.
Actually, it was with industrial energy
Industrial,
efficiency.
yeah. A very promising opportunity there. It's a capital-intensive way to invest for the customers, but combined heat and power for a large enough user with a long-term horizon can make a lot of sense and can be a really economic way to offset some of the uncertainty around energy costs for them.
Great, thank you. I think Kate here has a question on the Pope's encyclical.
Okay, I'm not going to ask that question, Keith. Joe, I can't help but ask. I'm Kate Barter with Ohio State and working for an institution of higher education that's educating many of your future workers. Yes. I wonder if you could comment on what skills and characteristics would a undergrad at OSU who's interested in the energy business, and a lot of them show up in my office, what would you recommend that they try to learn during their college experience to better equip them to be successful in your industry in the long term?
That's a great question. And one of the things that I've looked for and that I see happen as people transition from the academic environment to the professional environment is you pretty quickly find yourself working in interdisciplinary teams. So you might be a communications professional trained in that, or you might be an engineer, but the projects we work on, the work we do, almost always brings people together from across those disciplines. So experiences that look like that while you're in college, working on a team. I know OSU does the solar decathlon. It's a great example of a team of interdisciplinary students coming together to do a project in a competitive environment. But that experience, to me, is much more like day one, week one in our environment than anything else you'd get through an engineering discipline or any other traditional discipline. So that's a big one.
Joe, you don't always think of the utility industries as being the most exciting career in the world.
You keep saying that. Now you're not helping us here.
But you're the CEO now. So what's exciting about NiSource and Columbia Gas, your industry, where it's going, and how you're charged up while you're moving ahead?
Yeah, right at the front, charged up. That was good. Yeah, right at the front of that is watching people thrive in this environment. There's so much opportunity. Our employees, you can see it. You can sense the energy, the commitment to what we do in an environment where we're providing a very valuable service to our customers. So that is always at the front. And in this moment, this era that we're in, as I said earlier, it's a great time to be in the energy industry, whether you're in engineering, finance, communications, you name it. There are so many different ways you can carve out a great career in this space, and watching people go through that and get energized by that is by far the number one thing for me.
That's great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. Great conversation today, great questions. We encourage you to continue the conversation in the lobby with coffee and cookies. Remember, you can view and share all of our forums on CTV, Columbus Television, on WOSU and PBS affiliates statewide through the Ohio channel, and anytime on CMC's website via YouTube. Before we conclude, please help me thank our sponsors, American Electric Power, Columbia Gas of Ohio, and special thanks to Deloitte for their sponsorship today. And they've been great partners, and they sponsor a lot of forums. We're love to see them each time they're out. And our speakers, Joe Hamrock and Don DePerro. And thanks to all of you for being here. We'll see you again soon at CMC.